Welcome back. We are live.
Yes. Hello and welcome to Lifestyle Business.
I'm Chris.
And I'm Ann. And today we are ending the final season of 2020.
Is 2020 over yet?
It's almost.
It's about to be for us, at least. We're taking the rest of the year off.
I wish. Oh boy. No. But we are ending the season and the year of shows with a bang with our friend and a great guest, Andrew Berkowitz, with over 15 years of experience under his belt. He's an expert at harnessing the power of technology to elevate brands. And he's going to be here a little later to share his secret sauce on how to build podcast brands from scratch and convert them into meeting commercial businesses. And fun fact, Andrew was the intro to our world of podcasting.
I think he kind of got us on the podcasting thing, right?
Really? Yeah, he did. He did.
Yeah.
We've done a ton of work with Andrew over the last few years, and he's like #1 podcaster on Apple, and he has brought us into his world and his orbit, and he's given us a few tips and tricks. I'm sure he has a few ideas for us today, but we're just so happy to have him back on and to see him on screen, which is going to be great. And I've learned a lot from him over the years, so I'm sure you guys will too.
Funny, in a previous life or previous year, we'd be hanging with Andrew at Web Summit
together,
right?
Yeah. Running our Ecosystem Summit program. Andrew would be getting great content and producing an amazing show with over 150 leaders from across the world, supporting their own ecosystems and learning from each other. And that's something that we did together many times and was, some of the most fun times with Andrew, walking around with him and shadowing him as he got all the nuggets from ecosystems around the world. And we're excited to hear what he's got going on. But before we get there, another hit to the sad box of 2020.
Yeah, I was reflecting this morning. We saw, you may have seen this weekend, the loss of Tony Hsieh, the founder of Zappos, and was sort of thinking about it. And what a year 2020 has been. It was January when we learned about Kobe Bryant dying, and now here December, Tony Hsieh was tragically killed in a house fire. But anyway, I just wanted to sort of share my reflection because he was somebody that I met and spent time with. The CEO of Zappos. Zappos is a great company. Ended up selling for over $1 billion to Amazon. But I remember going out with Jared Ramos very early in the Zappos run and really being impressed with sort of the focus on company culture. And he turned that culture into a book. Wrote a book called Delivering Happiness that was in a lot of ways a Bible for customer focused customer service and making people happy and doing it with authenticity. And I ended up inviting him to speak at TribeCon, one of the conferences that
What a get!
Well, almost get. He came, but it wasn't for the conference. It was the week before. There was a scheduling conflict or whatever, but it was on his book tour, and he drove his this bus around the country and showed up in New Orleans, and we did this awesome talk out in front of the IP building. Ended up going out to dinner with him at Sylvain with a few other friends in New Orleans, and we had a great dinner together. And then the next day, took the whole Zappos team and UPS, who also has helped sponsor it, and went and built houses in St. Bernard. This was sort of post-Katrina, so in the 9th Ward. But then finally, his career arc also led to the tremendous investment in downtown Las Vegas. With the downtown project and the revitalization of downtown Las Vegas.
Talk about an ecosystem builder.
I mean, truly an ecosystem builder, and really impressive. The work that he did and the startups that he invested in and the recruiting and the development that he did there. So, I mean, what a career. and just inspiring to all of those things that he did throughout his career. I mean, he's 46. I'm 46. I feel like I'm a little unaccomplished. Hopefully still got time.
We have a lot of work to do.
We got some work to do.
No, but it is true. It is interesting. Like as an ecosystem builder, he had such a passion for bringing back, a real highlight to Las Vegas, and certainly the downtown project. And that is, it's that tireless work that it takes, and oftentimes it's unthanked. But it's so great when someone does something really well in their own life, and then realizes how they want to give that leg up to their community and those folks. And so, as entrepreneurs, we always talk about you need that first believer. Someone was a first believer in Tony, and then he became a first believer in so many others.
Exactly.
And was such the heart and soul of what happened in that downtown project, but also inspired and spawned so many other leaders in the downtown project, because it's not just always one person, right? One person often gets to carry the mantle, but at the end of the day, it's the hard work of everyone, of the investors, of the leaders, of the innovators, everyone in the ecosystem that comes together and really has an impact on the economy around. And Tony was, what an excellent exemplar of that. Yeah, truly. And fun fact, he also had recruited VFA to Las Vegas, and he was that would be quite a fellowship. The original co-host of Collision before I took the reins over as the co-host of Collision back in the day. So a lot of good parallels. Anyway, rest in peace, Tony Hsieh. You've impacted so many people's lives, and it's a big loss. So with that, anything else you want to get into before we jump into the last show? We've got some exciting member magic. Well, let's talk about the member magic first. I think it's great that we've been talking about ecosystem building, because we've got Andrew on, and he is one of the premier ecosystem building catalysts. So we'll talk to Andrew in a second. Let's go to Newark. Okay. All right. This week, NewarkMemberPhone.com was highlighted as one of the top 6 phone services for small businesses in a recent Tech Radar article. How do they come up with top 6? I don't know. Well, they're the top 1 for us. All right. And Launchpad member L&M and Type A Projects announced a historic effort to hire New York residents in the construction of 542 first phase Bronx Point, a 100% permanently affordable project in the South Bronx. That's pretty cool, actually. This is an unprecedented effort to use union labor and hire locally, important things. And Type A Projects is also an all-women-owned development team. No one's surprised by that title. Space in Newark. That's awesome. It's amazing. And L&M are our partners in Newark, and they really forward-thinking developers who really think about sense of place and impacting their community. So excited for them. Yep. All right, let's go on to New Orleans, the OG Launchpad city. Congratulations to Launchpad NOLA members Lydia Winkler for making Business Insider's list of rising stars of real estate. Awesome. All right. Rent Check is the company. Get Rent Check. We had them on recently. Yeah, we did. She's been a guest on the show. She's been a guest on the show, and we're excited to see what they're doing. And it's a great app. Yep. And now over to Stockton. And a special acknowledgement to our Stockton member, Grassroots Child Care Cooperative, who sponsored a drive-up diaper giveaway. 50 packages with diapers and children's books were handed out to families during that giveaway. You should have been there. I should have been there. No, I should have been giving away the diapers. Oh, okay. Right. I had my own diaper giveaway today with some holiday diapers for some other friends and children. That's what we do now. Christmas diapers. Holiday diapers. Holiday diapers. Gnomes. Anyway. All right. And now he's a newly minted media fellow at the Milken Institute, the executive producer and host of the #1 podcast on emerging market startups, the global startup movement, and a managing partner at Zwile Media. the leading experts in building and monetizing online communities. We are so happy to host him today. Please welcome Andrew Berkowitz.
It's been a while. It's been a while. By the way, so you said before that I've been at this for 15 years. 15 years ago, I was in middle school.
I honestly, I read that and was like, wow, he's really gotten up there in the last few years.
Well, so
and also he would have invented podcasting.
In which case you would have been right
so
up there.
I was doing
the
morning announcements in middle school and high school. So maybe that was like the core of, what launched me as a media entrepreneur.
Gelman, you got it wrong. Anyway, welcome, Andrew. I imagine it's more like 5 years.
5 years, yeah. It's like 5 years.
There you go. Well, it's great to have you on board, and it has been. I was so pleased to hear about your new fellowship at Milken. So why don't you tell us what you're up to and what you want to talk about today?
Oh yeah, I mean, there's a lot to talk about, a lot going on in the world, right? So I guess why don't I just start off a little bit of my story, how I got here, and it's basically kind of a very interesting story of just completely following my heart and seeing where that takes me. And so I basically graduated from Virginia Tech in 2015. Coming out of school, I tried the corporate path for a few weeks before it just wasn't for me. Kind of in the wake of that.
Capital One.
Yes.
A few months, but I noted that you were in the corporate world for not very long. You had to make a jump into the entrepreneurial movement.
Yeah, and so much to the frustration of my parents, my next move was to move back in and launch a podcast in their basement. Back when podcasting was probably much more of a hobby than it was an actual career trajectory. That's okay. So really over the course of the next 4 years, I worked with a couple of different startups. One with my friend Mike Myers down in South Carolina called Tradeversity, which didn't really work out, but that's okay because there was a lot of learning there. And basically went all in on the global startup movement around 2016, 2017. And just over the next few years, built it up into a globally syndicated media property. So now we have a syndicated reach of about 2.5 million worldwide. And that's across radio partners, digital media partners all throughout Africa and the Middle East region. And just really went deep on figuring out how do I turn this podcast thing into a business. I think it's very similar to co-working, where it's like there's a lot of value that's being created here. There's a lot of value that's aggregating to this brand. But like, how do you make money?
If you have some tips on that, I'm very interested.
I do. That's why I'm here.
All right.
But basically, that first kind of partnership with you guys on the Ecosystem Summit was actually really insightful for me. Because if you recall, when I showed up, I basically, invited some of my past guests to join us, and there were actually a lot of people that showed up. And so that was an interesting insight for me, because it was like, this game isn't about huge audience. It's not about like trying to be Tim Ferriss or Joe Rogan. It's about going super, super deep on a specific topic that other people aren't going deep on. And then what that is able to do for someone is it gathers a very sticky, high quality, highly engaged audience. And so for me, there just weren't a lot of people talking about startups in Africa. And so I just kind of, went all in on that and started to get this very high quality niche audience of mainly emerging market focused VCs and development finance professionals. And, that was a super key insight for me, and just focusing on the niche, focusing on not trying to get a big audience, but how do I really kind of build a relationship with 1,000 people, just like Kevin Kelly's thesis is, 1,000 true fans. And I found that to be very true in the podcast space. So that's kind of been my journey. And now I am, as you mentioned, a newly minted media fellow at the Milken Institute, which I'm very grateful that opportunity came my way. And I also have Zwile, which is a very boutique podcast consulting firm based in the DC area. So we mostly just work with think tanks and trade associations on their podcasting and media strategy. But that's me.
That's amazing. So let's dig into the global startup movement, and that I love that notion of, the 1,000 true fans.
Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit how you actually did that. And I tap into the guest comment that you make, because I think one of the things that we think about is the benefit of doing this show is great to produce for the audience, but it's also an amazing opportunity to have conversations in a different way with the guests. And so talk to us a little bit about that 1,000 true fans and how you activated your guest profiles to get you there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's really was just a game of consistency. Like I've been publishing, I published the Global Startup Movement every single week for 4.5 years. And so when you do that, you're actually building two stakeholder groups. The first is the audience that you're building, and then the second is the guest list that you're building. And so I kind of have two very niche engaged email lists of past guests and audiences, or the audience. So what I started to realize over time is this media format of podcasting is actually reflective of a much deeper and more profound shift in media dynamics that the internet has really introduced into society. And that is basically the death of the celebrity, the death of the one-to-many. We curate everything. We decide the editorial and we broadcast it to you and you take it. That was Ellen, Oprah, Johnny Carson. But what
Regis and Kathy.
Exactly. But what is basically emerging in the ashes of that is the rise of the community convener. And that's somebody that is able to actually gather a community and facilitate and, be a leader, not necessarily like one-to-many broadcasts, but gather 1,000 people around a fireside chat format where they feel like they're actually a part of the conversation. And a podcast can uniquely provide that, interaction. And so what I started to realize was, I shouldn't be just bringing on people and just interviewing them, trying to find the best and biggest names in tech around the world and just interviewing them. What I needed to start doing, and what a podcast is really powerful media format for, is basically running a proper editorial process. What are the biggest stories? What's happening? And then who are the closest people to those issues? Bringing them on the show, extract and deliver the insight from them. And in order to properly do that, you have to go deep on that specific subject area. Because if you're not asking the right questions and extracting the right insights and delivering it to your audience, because of the format, because the audience probably knows their stakeholders within the industry, they're not going to buy into you as a community convener because you don't know what you're talking about. And so it's a very vulnerable medium. And it took me probably 2.5, 3 years before I could even come close to properly fulfilling that role of being a leader for this niche community. Just because, I started pretty raw, just didn't know what I was talking about. Just some 23-year-old kid that had a podcast,
And so in a lot of ways it's about, being a good interviewer, and it's about you are sort of the mouthpiece and putting together this content for the community that you've built. So you need to be able to ask the questions that they're curious about, right? You don't have to be the expert. They're not necessarily showing up for Andrew Berkowitz. They're showing up for the content and the guests that you're bringing on, although they're building a relationship with you. But you have to be able to ask the questions that are on their minds and deliver value through the interviews and through the relationships that you're bringing onto the podcast.
Exactly. And really the way we do that is basically by two things. One, just paying close attention to what people are talking about on Twitter, what people are, I get so many WhatsApp messages from just random, ambassadors or just world bankers that listen to the podcast that start a dialogue, and it's beautiful, but what we do is basically aggregate an RSS feed from all the big tech media platforms all over the world. And I'm just constantly checking to see what are the big headlines, what's going on in the world, trying to, maintain the pulse on that. And that's kind of how we basically reverse engineer editorial from that And then we decide who are the closest people to these issues that can properly, give some insight into it. And that is the way I think to do a podcast in 2020 and beyond. Just find a niche that not a lot of people are talking about, run a proper editorial process for that niche, and you'll have a pretty valuable media asset if you are consistent for 2 years.
Well, I think that is a really good point, which is, I'm a huge believer that age and experience doesn't necessarily dictate success, right? Or outcome. And so the fact that you're like, yes, you were a 23-year-old who knew nothing about what you were doing, and then you can quickly figure out what those elements are and have those conversations and start to gain depth in that specific topic is important. But it also means that there's no time like the present for people who are thinking about whether or not they want to jump into this, and that fear of what it is. And we heard that from Jason Nicosia on an earlier episode around, how do you hyper niche yourself? You may not know what that is at the beginning. And I think we've even seen an evolution of how we think about the show over the course of the season and how we're thinking about the show in future seasons. And I think people should just sort of say, one of the benefits is that you can have absolutely no experience and get started and become a success. So if you have any experience in a topic or anything to come to the table with relevancy, this is a great medium for you to try. And as much as it's high risk in some ways, it's also super low risk because, you're having a conversation and you're trying it, and you will eventually evolve to find what is that moment.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. So there's a lot to unpack there.
Always.
So a lot of people ask me or say, well, I feel like it's just too late for me to actually launch a podcast out there. Like there are so many, like I feel like I missed the boat. And look, I mean, in 2019, there was about $709 million generated through podcast advertising in the US. And that's across everybody. $709 million. That's across Joe Rogan, Gimlet, CNN, BBC, Tim Ferriss, every single podcaster. So like this is a non-existent industry right now. There's no imagine putting a total addressable market of 700 million, and like Joe Rogan just got acquired for 100 million. So he's like,
all of it.
Exactly. And so like podcasting, if you launched before 2020, you were probably too early. And like that was kind of my conclusion. Like this year, like what the coronavirus did is it put everyone in front of their laptop in an engaged manner. And now there are platforms like, I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with like circle.so or Mighty Networks. I think Mighty Networks is actually ex-Ning co-founder.
Gina Bianchini, the former CEO of Ning.
Yeah. And so, this idea, Kevin Kelly's thesis of 1,000 true fans is like here now for podcasting, but it wasn't here a couple years ago. Like with the global startup movement, I could not, can I curse on the show, by the way?
Yeah. Of course, yeah.
Okay, I could not land a fucking business model to this like asset that I was building. And it was really, really frustrating for, 3 years, just a really tough entrepreneurial journey. And just so many instances of like, God damn, I just need to do B2B SaaS. Like, I just need a B2B SaaS company. This podcast stuff is, but the kind of culmination, it's been an interesting year for me. So the culmination of my journey was finally landing a business model towards the end of last year, actually. And that, you guys are going to think this is hilarious. That business model was basically live events and conferences. Because, the audience that I was building, like development finance professionals, emerging market VCs, like they're all in DC, maybe some in London, but like I started to realize, wow, like this concept of like niche is like real. And like, I need to go all in actually on just focusing this podcast as like a DC thing. And so we landed a really nice business model of live podcast events in partnership with embassies in DC. And so 2020 was kind of my year of like taking a breath and like kind of starting to reap some of the rewards of what I had built over the past 4 years. And once the coronavirus stuff happened, I mean, it took me till at least June to just kind of energetically just like let go of like this life I thought I was going to be living, you know, in 2020. And so you mentioned I'm in DC. I'm actually in Asheville, North Carolina right now.
Nice.
Yeah. I just had to get out of DC. It wasn't just energetically. I needed to take a break.
And now you can be anywhere.
Well, exactly, for sure. And so my winter project, I'm actually looking at land out here, just like a 5-acre property where I can put in a tiny home, put it in my own greenhouse, and that's my winter project. So considering, or I guess as long as there's no weird stuff going on in DC come January, February, I'll be back. But my kind of winter project is to get this tiny home live on Airbnb and then head back up to DC.
That's awesome.
I mean, that's a great way. We have often talked this year about not squandering. It's easy to get caught up in the trauma of the year, but it's so important. We've talked a lot about making sure that we actually embrace the quiet and embrace what the year has to offer and the unique opportunities that come from that. And so things like building a tiny home would be one example of that.
Yeah.
Ours is building a 2-year-old.
That's funny.
That's our tiny home. That's our tiny
person. Yeah. That's awesome.
Andrew, I'm curious, thinking about the audience of Launchpad members and entrepreneurs who might be watching this show. One of the things that we've identified and seen in our locations is the rise of podcasting and the interest in podcasting. And, like you said, I've been watching your career, and we obviously have known each other for a number of years, and you were certainly early on it. And I'm interested in your notion of like, now is the right time, because, a couple of years ago, it felt like there were a lot of technical barriers, and, there was sort of like, how do I produce it? And what's the right mic? And, what's the right software for streaming? We're using this now. StreamYard, which we really like. But it seems like, just like everything on the internet, eventually technology becomes ubiquitous enough that just having technology is table stakes, and you should be able to figure that out. So then it becomes exactly what you described, which is truly building an audience, not just putting content out there that nobody's listening, and that sort of consistency. But I think we have entrepreneurs and people that think about starting a podcast or would like to start a podcast. And the question is, what am I talking about, right? What is my podcast about? And I'm hearing from you that like that really niche, whether it's niche or not, a really clear focus so that people, as they're consuming it, and if you think about it from a consumer standpoint, I'm going through Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever I listen, and I'm digging for something that I really am curious about this topic. How would you encourage people to go on that journey with themselves? Like, how would you encourage people to sort of identify that topic that they can own and really focus on with the podcast?
Well, I think there's two paths. The path that I took is definitely the harder one, which is launching into industry you know nothing about. If you do that, you better be ready to commit 3 to 4 years before you see, the fruits of the effort. If you are an expert already, and again, like from 2016 to 2019, the only people that were successful in podcasting in a meaningful way were already celebrities, or were already, Alex Bloomberg. And they were launching with, something that they already had. They didn't build from scratch. But now, the way I view it is basically a stack comprising of podcast, virtual conferences, webinars. And so I view kind of the global startup movement and like all the clients that I advise, everything as like independent media brands that are podcast first, but you need a proper, you need to think about a proper stack, because you're reverse engineering from, I want to build a community. What's like the media, what's the cadence that I need to be putting out there to allow this community to gather? And so like, I think the podcast is the core of the strategy. But the tough thing about a podcast is it's a very antiviral medium. there were so many times where I had an episode that went viral within, like we posted it on Twitter or Facebook or whatever, and it went completely viral, you know, hundreds of retweets, thousands of likes within that social media platform. But in terms of like uptick and download count for the podcast itself, not really, you know, and I think it's because people aren't in social media to like click out and listen to like a super long form piece of content. And so it's an interesting medium because the moat that you're building is not hackable. You can't just come in and throw a bunch of money or budget at a podcast and like go viral. And so like for me with the global startup movement, like there's no like Facebook, World Bank, like if they want to launch a podcast that's, you know, in the same category, you can't hack community and authenticity and trust. It's something that you have to build over time. And so now certainly is the greatest time ever to launch a podcast. It is certainly the most, I think requires the most vulnerability out of any media or like anything you can do. Cause it's like you're in people's ear. Like it's a very vulnerable thing to like put out a podcast and just like put yourself out there. That's really that's really powerful, right? I mean, it's kind of what people are looking for in 2020. It's a really, I guess the way I would sum it up is it's a really poor medium for ego-led or ego-driven leaders, but it's like the medium now for heart-centered leaders because people feel it. You're deep in their ear. They feel it from you. And that's why I think Joe Rogan was so successful. Like he checked all the boxes. He was a celebrity going into it. He started early. I think his audience he's like the Oprah for dudes. Like the audience kind of feels that he's authentic.
Joe Rogan, the Oprah for dudes. That's awesome.
Yeah, I didn't coin that, by the way. I saw someone else said that, so I won't take credit for that.
Okay.
But yeah, let's see. I'm going on kind of a tangent here. I guess I'll wrap it up in a nice bow by using this Quibi thing as a case study. So Quibi, you know, raised $1 billion. Their big bet or insight was, well, millennial and Gen Z are all mobile first, so let's just create a mobile optimized app that is a one-to-many celebrity to the masses broadcast. But again, it's like not hitting the mark, which is the fact that media dynamics have shifted. The community needs a voice. So what Quibi should have built was TikTok, because that makes you the star. You're the star of TikTok. Quibi is still just like all these celebrities, you know, broadcasting to me, and I don't even care about them anymore because I have a voice now with the internet. And so like podcasting is ground zero of this shift. And it's exciting times for sure.
That's awesome.
I love it.
That's interesting. The analogy to, TikTok and sort of, because I think that's a little bit of what's at the core of the success there is, where Instagram was, putting up pictures of this perfect life. There's actually community in people replicating a dance that you see somebody else doing or doing something, being, the vulnerability, right? The actual, like, I'm a human, I'm doing something silly, I'm sort of having fun doing it. I have tens of people that tune into the podcast just because they like really have enjoyed just like following my journey, like they might have come across the global startup movement a few years ago when I was like 23, 24. Now that I'm, a little bit more seasoned and I can and actually know what I'm talking about. I can see the seasoning right there on your
right. Anne, what do you think?
Someone
give me your hot, your honest opinion, man, on the beard. It's good stuff, right?
Yeah.
I had never grown a beard before, but when quarantine happened, I just kind of let it go, and then I realized, oh wait, I can actually kind of grow a beard. It looks pretty good.
Yeah.
Not bad.
Yeah. So, sorry. What were we talking about?
What were you guys talking about? Oh, sorry. You guys started mutual bearded admiration.
Yeah, I don't have the touch of white though. It's like there's so much wisdom there.
He's got a lot more seasoning than you do.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Right. I was saying how I'm a little bit more seasoned than I was at the beginning of the podcast. And so like, just like being consistent, putting yourself out there, getting your reps in, you know, it's, you will build an audience over time.
And a muscle.
Yeah. I think that the 1,000 true fans, in terms of, you know, building your community, it doesn't have to be for, you know, you're not trying to be Joe Rogan. Maybe you get there, but finding that, you know,
well, Joe Rogan started as Joe Rogan.
Yeah. But the other part of it is the whole 10,000 hours notion, right? It doesn't happen overnight. I've been watching Gary Tan's YouTube sort of progression, and he's been talking a lot about how, you know, it does take, you know, the time to build an audience, to get good at it. You know, we've been, you know, consistent ish. We do it in seasons now, so we don't do it every week. We go for like sprints, like, you know, 11 or 12 weeks, and then take a little time off. And Ariel, our producer, is amazing about keeping us on, but it does require consistency. This type of medium, you can't just do it every once in a while and expect to build an audience.
Yeah, I mean, especially in the early days, I think as you build the archive, like for me with the Global Startup Movement, I just have so much content, just so much, just, you know, weekly for 5 years now. So like, you know, consistency in the early days, because you have to build that trust when you tune into a podcast. Like, you're trusting that the host isn't about to waste 45 minutes of your time, you know, and that it kind of takes time and a proper cadence over time to build that trust.
All right. Okay, I'm going to do quick fire with you.
Ooh, I love it.
A couple things.
Let's do it.
All right. If you're thinking about starting a podcast, tell me the 3 things that you should immediately think about.
Ooh, 3 things you should immediately think about. Do I have a time limit on these quick fire rounds? Or is like,
no, go ahead.
Okay.
Slow fire. You have to be fast.
3 things. So first is like the most important thing. What is the community you're trying to build? Like everything you do is reverse engineered from that. What is the community you want to build? And get very specific with it. Like, I literally have a whole one page that says, you know, Bob is a 35-year-old. He works at the World Bank. He just left to, you know, join this emerging market VC firm, and he wants to learn more about startups in Africa. And so like get very specific about like, these are the type of people I want to build. And then just go about your business as any media company would do. You know, do your research, do proper editorial, reach out to people that are closest to the issues that everybody is talking about, and just ask them questions about it, you know? So that's number 1, get clear in the audience. Number 2 is, I would say, set up an RSS feed, which is basically an aggregation of all the big like media companies that are currently in the space, and check it every week. If not, you don't need to do it every day, just every week, just to get an idea of like, what are people talking about? What are all the like big headlines in the area? And that is just the best way to kind of reverse engineer your editorial process for the themes that you touch on the podcast. Number 3, think about how you incorporate virtual events. I think like the Global Startup Summit that I did with you guys, like, it's unbelievable how much insights I got on like what a podcast is from doing that event. Like, that was when I realized that, oh my God, like I need to just go all in on DC as for audience building.
Yeah.
And so like,
I mean, that was a super cool event too. It's sort of like, we've been watching all these virtual conferences and events roll out. And it's just kind of funny. A couple of years ago, that was 4 days of amazing content and tons of engagement. And it was so interesting to do something in such a concentrated form and to see the results of that.
Yeah. Well, what's so funny is that like my conclusion from that was virtual events are cool, but live events are like the thing in the future.
100%. No,
which is so funny because it was just so wrong, you know, with 2020 and everything. I thought about like really pushing the gas pedal on virtual events once like the whole pandemic started, because I was like, I've done this, I know how to do it, but I just needed to step away for like the summer. It was just like, lot going on.
Yeah.
But I guess the exciting thing is in 2021, I am basically switching away from our weekly flagship interview format to a quarterly mini series format. And so we have some really exciting ones. I'm actually going to be announcing Tuesday on the podcast. But it's exciting stuff. And so basically each mini series is going to combine a different stack of narrative podcast series, virtual gatherings, live content, and interactive webinars. And again, that's like back to the thesis of like, you're not doing a podcast, you're doing a podcast first media brand that requires a full stack of different, formats.
Full stack. All right.
Yeah. And I think I covered 3, right?
You got it.
All right. Next one.
What's your quick fire?
Prediction for 2021. What are we sticking with that we've all sort of gotten into from this year, like a lot of virtual, get-togethers like this, and what do you see on the horizon for 2021 that we'll maybe get back to a new normal?
Okay. So if you don't own any Bitcoin, you literally need to like sell all your dumb stocks and go all in. Like 2021 is going to be the most insane year of like finance and money that like we've certainly ever seen in our lifetime. It's going to get really crazy. Like, so 2021 is going to be the year of Bitcoin, Ethereum, and it would be a good idea to hold Bitcoin and Ethereum right now. I don't know if that probably wasn't the answer you're looking for.
Yeah,
but
I'll take
that's
it.
Yeah. Like once China launches their central bank digital currency, that's when shit is going to get really serious.
Yeah. I did see some news about that today. That was sort of interesting. So
yeah, we should bring Peter on from.
Chris, aren't you good friends with Pump?
Yeah, we could get Pump on. Yeah,
definitely get him on.
Yeah, we could.
Okay,
right,
so hold on.
Blockchain topics coming up.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so I'm trying to think of any more hot takes that I can give to that answer. I really, really hope we get live events back. I mean,
yeah,
like this virtual stuff is cool, but like I need human interaction. Like I would just thrive off of my days, running around DC to just like different meetings, like going to this event at this embassy. It's just like I need that, to function properly.
Yeah.
So
I feel like there's going to be the right mix is going to be some sort of a hybrid, plus, IRL model. It's really cool how we can connect and, have a good, professional, interview like this and be on different coasts. But it would still be great to, get a chance to get together and, give you a hug or, hang out like we would at Collision and Web Summit. So I think that's where it's going to go back to.
I hope so, but my prediction is VR events become a big thing in 2021. I just ordered my Oculus or the new Oculus. I'm so excited for it. Well, I'm actually I see what this has done to people. Just like always like this.
Yeah.
And so I am a little bit concerned about like virtual reality, what that's going to do to society. The fact that like we as a society are not mature enough to have the conversation of like how much virtual reality porn is going to just destroy this next generation of young people. And we're just not mature enough to even address it, have the conversation. So there are some concerns around virtual reality for sure.
Around what virtual reality porn is.
Yeah.
He froze. He's like, oh, I didn't think about that.
Well, it's a real concern. But I think virtual reality becomes a big thing in 2021.
I mean, we did watch
Careful of
Christmas
the porn.
Vacation. Chevy Chase always has imaginary porn montage. I guess it wouldn't be porn. It would be more like dreamscape. It's always inappropriate.
I think Chevy Chase low before my time.
Yeah, exactly.
I'd like to say a little before mine. Anyway, good. Well, it was so fun to have you on, Andrew. And I look forward to continuing the conversation and seeing what you do over at Milken. And we'll be ready for tips and tricks. And I think I learned something about what we need to think about for next season and for future spawning podcasts that we might create.
Yeah. I mean, you definitely need like a lifestyle business virtual gathering. Call it a virtual festival. I think that's a little bit sexier than just like virtual conference or virtual summit.
Festival, I like that.
But
we need to have it in real life. I mean, we've been talking about it. Actually, Lifestyle Business was supposed to be our in real life festival up here in Sonoma County that we were going to run, where we were going to bring people together in a smaller gathering, kind of similar to Ecosystem Summit, with the idea that like people gather at different wineries and different locations throughout, and it's very experiential. And then, that obviously has not happened and certainly didn't happen in 2020. So we brought it online, but yeah, maybe a virtual festival.
Still in the cards
in real life or online.
Yeah, for sure. Let me know how I can help.
Yeah.
I can't wait. We will. So it's great to have you. I look forward to catching up in 2021.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Have a great holiday season, Andrew. We're going to let you go and wrap up here, and we'll talk to you soon.
Cool. Take care.
All right. Take care.
All right.
That was fun. Really.
I was going to ask him what's one good thing that we're doing and then one thing that we could improve on, but I didn't think we had our egos had it in us today. So next time Andrew comes on, he'll give us a report card. A report card. He thinks I'm doing. I know he thinks I'm doing great.
Of course you are.
Okay, but this is the last show of our season. We're going to come back in January. Ariel promises us. We got
with a whole new set of amazing guests.
That's right.
And speaking of podcasts, on today's show, if you don't know, Lifestyle Business is also a podcast. So available on all the usual podcast locations, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, everywhere else you can get a podcast. So if you are catching this episode, but missed some previous episodes and want to spend time over your holidays catching up on everything you've missed.
There were a lot of topics you can catch up on.
Go get that podcast wherever you listen to podcasts.
I don't know that the PPP loan discussions will stand the test of time, but I know our conversations with Mark Mariel and Mitch Landrew and Mayor Michael Tubbs will stand the test of time and continue to inspire and educate our audience as we go forward.
Just go to these podcast platforms and search for Lifestyle Business or Chris and Ann, and it'll pop up.
You might even see some fun episodes of the Chris and Ann show. But until next year and until then, we hope that you stay healthy, happy, safe, and you have a wonderful holiday season and a very happy new year.
Thanks so much for tuning in, folks, and we'll see you in 2021.